The truth of the Bible, which is the truth of this reality, is like the movie The Matrix. Now, personally, I hadn't watched the movie The Matrix growing up as a kid until Andrew Tate coined the term in popular culture. Specifically, he's referring to the elites and those controlling the systems in our world. And I know, it looks like a dumb science fiction movie. You see them dodging bullets in slow motion. But if you guys actually watch the movie and you process the concepts that the movie is playing on, it deeply reflects the same concepts that are in the Bible. It's just profound when you see it. Now, I'm not going to pontificate for 30 minutes as to what exactly I mean. We're just going to react to a video called The Philosophy of the Matrix. And I'm going to interject my points as to what and how this directly relates to the Bible, in my opinion. So without further ado, guys, let's go.
The Matrix, a science fiction film created by the Wachowskis, is probably one of the most influential movies ever made. The story starts when computer programmer Thomas Anderson, operating as a hacker under the alias Neo, discovers the truth about the world he's living in, as he becomes aware of the existence of something known as the Matrix. After looking for a man named Morpheus, who can tell him more about the Matrix, he encounters another hacker named Trinity. After a failed attempt, which led to Agent Smith capturing and bugging him, Trinity takes Neo to Morpheus. Morpheus vaguely describes the Matrix as this all-encompassing prison, as the world that has been pulled over Neo's eyes, blinding him from the truth.
So the Matrix, for one, I'm going to liken not just to like those who control the systems and powers of the world. The Matrix, when we look at it from a biblical perspective, is the physical world that we live in. It's the world that seems real to us right now, but as we all know, we all die. I've watched those who have had near-death experiences, and they say that the spiritual world, the spiritual realm that they visited, felt more real than this reality that we live in now. And so I kind of couple that together, and I'm thinking, one, obviously this life is a test, but two, there is something a lot more real on the other side of this.
It's offered a choice in the form of two pills, a blue one and a red one. If he chooses the blue pill, he remains in his everyday life and believes whatever he wants to believe. But if he chooses the red pill, he'll set foot in the real world and find out what the Matrix truly is. All I'm offering is the truth, says Morpheus. And so, Neo takes the red pill and tumbles down the rabbit hole.
So Neo is the protagonist in this movie, so obviously he's going to take the red pill. Back to Genesis. What do we have? We had the original red pill, blue pill test. The tree of life versus the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. What the tree of knowledge of good and evil was life removed from God. In the beginning, they had direct contact with God. The one thing they couldn't do, or the one thing they were told not to do, was to eat of that tree. When Adam and Eve ate the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, what that did is it pretty much put them in a reality where they were not in direct communication and in direct relationship with God. That's how we were originally designed. That's why when you're spiritually reborn, you are back in touch with that sense, that connection to God. But at the end of the day, it is a decision that each and every individual needs to make. Everyone needs to take the red pill or the blue pill. Let's continue.
The Matrix is considered a philosophical film that contains many existing philosophical and religious themes like prophecy, love, truth, karma, the nature of reality, and living in a simulation. But there seems to be a particular close connection between the Matrix and Plato's allegory of the cave. In this allegory, presented in Plato's Republic, Socrates describes a group of people chained to a wall within a cave their whole lives. The only reality they know of is the mere shadows projected on the wall in front of them, and they believe these are real entities. Then one of the prisoners is freed. He leaves the cave and gets to experience the real world outside. But when he returns to the cave to enlighten the other prisoners with the truth, he faces resistance.
If somebody who's had their spiritual sense revived and they go and try to convince someone who they don't have that same sense at all, it's dead, you're going to get pushback. That's why at the end of the day, a lot of humans kind of resist God. We might accept that there is a God, but we resist God in the way that he wants to have a relationship with us.
This video analyzes the Matrix film through the lens of Plato's allegory of the cave, while exploring the following question: do we, as human beings, actually want the truth? Please note, this video contains spoilers that reveal the plot. The prisoners of the cave are chained so that they cannot move their legs and necks. They can only sit and watch the wall in front of them, but cannot look around, cannot see each other, nor the wall they're chained to. Behind the prisoners burns a fire. There are people in between the fire and the prisoners. These people hold sticks with several forms: birds, horses, dogs, which project onto the wall. So all they've ever seen are mere projections of objects that appear in the real world, a world that's alien to them. When one of the prisoners is freed and ascends from the cave into the real world, he experiences sunlight for the first time in his life. He is confused and needs time to adapt, as he has never seen the daylight before. But when his eyes have adjusted, he encounters all the forms he recognizes from his life in the cave. But they're different this time. Instead of mere silhouettes, he sees the actual entities, full of color and with profound detail. He then realizes what he thought was real was in fact an illusion. Similarly, Neo has been imprisoned without being able to see the prison. When he wakes up from the simulated reality, his naked body lies in a pot filled with liquid. He notices that his body is full of plugs and then sees millions of other pods with humans connected to what seems a giant machine. After a supervising drone notices that Neo has awakened, his body gets unplugged and discharged into a sewer. After Morpheus' ship, the Nebuchadnezzar, retrieves Neo, he needs some time to adjust to the real world, just like the escapee from Plato's cave. A fundamental difference in experience between Plato's character and Neo is the kind of reality they face. In Plato's allegory, the liberated man ascends from darkness into the light, from the lower level within the cave to a higher level outside. This ascension serves as a metaphor for gaining knowledge and becoming a philosopher, and thus obtaining a clear world vision. Plato's reality presents itself as generally more beautiful in comparison with the cave. Also, the freedom of movement in the outside world is a vast improvement. Overall, the real world seems way more pleasurable, and it would be pretty absurd to exchange it for a life in the cave. But the Matrix is different. Morpheus told Neo that if he chooses the red pill, he will show him how deep the rabbit hole goes, referring to the children's novel Alice in Wonderland. Tumbling down a rabbit hole resembles a descent rather than ascent into reality. This idea comes to fruition when Neo falls from a relatively pleasurable reality into a hellish wasteland devoid of sunlight run by machines. As opposed to Plato's reality, the reality in the Matrix isn't beautiful. It's terrible. Those plugged into the Matrix.
So in the biblical worldview, there is both the descent into reality and also an ascent into reality as well. Let me explain. So before you are spiritually born again, before you are reacquainted with that spiritual side of you that you never knew existed, you are completely and utterly living your life to please yourself and your life in this moment, with the understanding that you are going to die at some point. Okay, real quick, guys, I have to interrupt because I'm watching back as I'm editing and I didn't quite explain my point. So what I mean by you have to descend into reality first in the biblical understanding before you can ascend into reality, which is the spiritual world, or what many people think as heaven, is specifically this. In order to see the kingdom of God, in order to regain that spiritual connection with God, in order to hear God, you have to let go of the wheel of your life, dying to all of your desires, everything that was driving you, everything that defined you, dying to all of it. Now, a lot of people will misconstrue what I said. I didn't say let go of the gas of your life. You still have work to do. As anyone who follows God, God calls you to work. So I am not at all saying don't work, don't grind. Not at all. The opposite, actually. Work like it's 100% on you, but pray like it's 100% on God. And that's exactly how that balance should go. If you take the red pill in the sense and you understand the truth of the Bible and you know that there is no death, then things start to look a lot more promising. Then you can actually start living life. And what do I mean by this? Your focuses, your intents are no longer about how can I get pretty much as I can get on this life here, but now it's how can I improve others? How can I help others? How can I get others to see the truth? Because the whole understanding is that there are two worlds. There's a physical world and there's a spiritual world. Now, you can choose whether or not you want to live in the spiritual world alive or dead. If you choose to live your life not in the spirit, consistently pleasing this flesh, having all of these different pleasures in life that really amount to nothing at the end of the day, then you're going to go into that spiritual world dead.
Matrix live in a vast, colorful, sunny world, although with a green haze, resembling the late 90s. They also have access to an endless variety of human pleasures. But in the real world, there's only one human city left, Zion, where people live under subhuman conditions, stuck in the outskirts, continually threatened of being obliterated by machines. So one could argue that, in the case of the Matrix, living imprisoned in the cave is more pleasurable than living freely in the outside world. Shortly after his liberation, Neo initially refuses to accept the truth. No, I don't believe it. It's impossible, he says, after Morpheus showed him what the Matrix is. He showed a typical reaction of someone confronted with the harsh reality. As the architect of the Matrix states in the sequel, denial is the most predictable of all human responses. We can see this when, for example, we discover that one of our parents isn't our biological parent, or the person we consider our greatest enemy turns out to be our parent. In such cases, the truth carries such a magnitude that accepting it shakes one's identity to its very foundations. Such a massive shift in perception generally terrifies people. Neo asks Morpheus, "I can't go back, can I?" To which Morpheus answers, "But if you could, would you really want to?" Flat out.
If you knew that there was something beyond this world, that there was actually life forever, and that these few passing moments in this world literally meant nothing, would you go back to living in a world where your whole aims are to please yourself in this life here because you only live once?
Disregard of the truth is common. Many people prefer living in a safe bubble of lies to looking outside for the truth. Living in a cozy false reality can be pretty convenient and comfortable. You just have to remain ignorant of everything that could burst your bubble. So instead, you go along with the deceptive narrative of the herd, often amplified by mass media and entertainment. But we also see the opposite happening, like people opposing common knowledge, adopting a false truth, like the idea that Earth is flat. So truth, by and large, can be easily fabricated. Merriam-Webster provides a definition of truth that goes as follows: a judgment, proposition, or idea that is true, or accepted as true. Morpheus' goal is to liberate the people from the Matrix, but he also realizes that as long as these people are part of the system, they're the enemy. First of all, because
God's goal is to free us from the chains that we have put ourselves in. God wants us to live forever. God is not playing some cosmic game of, let me see who I can with as much as I can. No, he's not playing that game. God wants to see people thrive, but God also loves perfectly. God is not going to force somebody to do something they don't want to do. Just like how a boyfriend cannot force his girlfriend to stay with him if she doesn't want to stay with them.
so-called agents protect the Matrix. These agents function a bit like a security program to keep Trojan horses and other malware out, and every human projection is potentially an agent. Second of all, most of them aren't ready to be unplugged. Similarly, when Plato's enlightened man tries to persuade the people in the cave to go outside, he meets resistance and ridicule. Plato describes such endeavor as inserting vision into blind eyes. It's a waste of time trying to convince someone of the truth if they aren't receptive to it. Morpheus also states that many are so hopelessly dependent on the system that they'll fight to protect it. Similarly,
this is why God is so hidden, because God only reveals himself to people who genuinely, with 100% of their heart, want to seek and to know him. If we're looking at it in the same ways of the Matrix, God isn't going to allow you to see the truth if you yourself don't want to see it. And if he knows, if God, reading your heart, knows you don't want to see it, and he knows you don't want to see him and who God is, and if you don't want to know who God is, then why would God show you himself?
Socrates asks if these people wouldn't kill the person offering them the truth about their existence. Nevertheless, Plato points to the philosopher's responsibility to act in the interest of the unenlightened ones, even if they're hostile, just as Neo, Morpheus, Trinity, and the other liberated humans do.
This is the whole reason why people who believe in the religion that they believe in try to convert other people. It's why Christians do ministry. It's why Muslims do dawah. It's why all of this happens. You feel some sort of duty once you see some aspect of the truth. You have this sense of duty to your other human beings around you to also be able to get them to see what you are seeing as well.
In Plato's allegory, we see that liberation ultimately positively affects the man who is freed. Also, Neo eventually accepts the truth and embraces reality. But what if someone knows the truth, but hates it so much that he chooses a false reality? Here's where a character named Cypher comes in. Cypher admits he regrets taking the red pill, saying to Neo, almost assuming he feels the same, "I know what you're thinking, because right now I'm thinking the same thing. Actually, I've been thinking it ever since I got here. Why, oh why, didn't I take the blue pill?" End quote. But Neo's body language clearly shows that he's not on the same line as Cypher. Even though he's stranded in the same dark world, he seems rather happy with his liberation. Neo finds meaning in it. It sort of takes on the role of Plato's enlightened man, as he takes responsibility to help the people still imprisoned. Moreover, he had always felt that something was off when he was still plugged in and unaware. He felt that he didn't belong there. He wasn't happy. Through his liberation, he found what he was looking for, which probably compensates sufficiently for having to face the bleakness of reality, especially because people regard him as the one, which makes his existence even more meaningful.
And that actually, when you think about it, it makes a lot more sense when you look at some of these Hollywood pedophiles and elites. These people obviously know that there's a God and there is also the devil in the demonic world. That's why they do all of these rituals. It bothers me so much because it's like they're knowingly searing their own conscience for fame or for whatever, power, whatever it is. They know that there is a supernatural world. They know that they're appealing to the wrong side of it, but they still do it.
Cypher, on the other hand, doesn't enjoy reality in the slightest. He also shows little faith in Morpheus' prophecy of the One. Eventually, he plugs himself into the Matrix to attend a secret meeting with Agent Smith. Although his argument probably falls on deaf ears, he tells Smith, "You know, I know this steak doesn't exist. I know that when I put it in my mouth, the Matrix is telling my brain that it is juicy and delicious."
And this is a perfect understanding of the homosexual Christians who are proud about their actions and what they do. Now, I'm not suggesting that Christians will not struggle with same-sex attraction, but if you see those who profess to be Christians and also will be proud of their homosexual actions as well, that is what we just see there with Cypher. It's, you know, the truth. There is the truth. There is spiritual world. There is right and wrong. Not saying that Christians will never sin, but if you are okay with it, that's a problem. We live in a world where wrong is so celebrated. We are indulging in things that we know are wrong and bad for our spirit, detrimental to us. But because this is the world that we're living in, which has both the spirit and the flesh, the world oftentimes just caters to the flesh. A lot of Christians just get looped into only serving the flesh. That's the whole reason why in the movie Cypher, he knew the truth. He took the red pill, but he still acted as an enemy. That's the whole reason why he was a traitor.
After 9 years, you know what I realize? Ignorance is bliss. End quote. Cypher is well aware that he cannot unsee what he has seen, which results from encountering truth. For him, being ignorant was great until Morpheus came along and threw a wet blanket on the party. When the veil of ignorance has been lifted, there's no going back. The truth lies naked in front of us.
This is why a lot of people don't seek God, because they know once they seek God and once they find God, then they're going to be responsible for right and wrong. A lot of people just refuse to even search the truth about God because the repercussions that come with finding the truth of it are life-altering.
We cannot unsee that the person we thought was our father isn't our biological father. We cannot unsee the betrayal of a partner we previously believed to be a trustworthy person. A relationship between people changes when its fundamental story turns out to be a lie, and reality is not as beautiful as it seems. The relationship was more enjoyable before the truth came out. Sure, it was based on an illusion, but in exchange for not knowing, we felt connection, love, intimacy, pleasure, and, ironically, trust. Truth destroyed all that. Cypher realizes that he's fundamentally stuck in a reality he despises, so he asks Agent Smith to plug him back into the Matrix to make him someone rich and influential, like an actor, as he stated. But most importantly, he wants all of his memories of the real world wiped. In return, he gives him Morpheus. Cypher essentially made a hedonistic decision, exchanging reality and freedom for blissful ignorance. Interestingly enough, he reveals his idea.
What do a lot of people do?
Trinity, which makes his decisions reasonable in his eyes. During Cypher's attempt to deport Morpheus, Trinity reminds him that Morpheus set him free. But Cypher disagrees and says that all he does is follow orders of a man who lied to them. And if he has to choose between that and the Matrix, he chooses the Matrix.
Again, I think that's a great reflection of the mindset of a lot of Christians. The Bible says that I'm to follow all these rules, but I just don't want to do it. So I'm going to choose to ignore the truth and I'm going to choose to follow my flesh.
Trinity then argues that the Matrix isn't real. But again, Cypher disagrees, saying, "I think that the Matrix can be more real than this world." The people liberated from the Matrix have the technological ability to plug themselves into the system and be part of a simulated reality as their so-called residual self-image. They can upload programs directly into their minds that contain skills like martial arts and load various items into the Matrix, like guns. Lots of guns. So they were exposed to an illusion first. Now, they have become illusionists themselves. When Neo goes back into the Matrix for the first time after his liberation and visits the city he lived in, he sees it in a different light. He realizes that none of his memories ever really happened. He recognizes places where he used to eat, work, live, but lucidly with the knowledge that they're just simulacra. The same must have happened to Plato's enlightened man, going back into the cave for the first time after his ascension, regarding the shadows on the wall. It probably leaves one disillusioned, perhaps disappointed with the lack of mystique these appearances once had. Finding out how a magic trick works makes it a lot less appealing. Truth, therefore, often goes at the expense of enjoyment. An example of this is a legendary character in Western Christian culture called Santa Claus, which originates from the early Christian bishop Saint Nicholas. For most children, Santa Claus is a truly magical experience, the idea of an old bearded man traveling from the North Pole in a sleigh pulled by flying reindeer. According to the legend, Santa's elves make toys and other presents in a secret workshop, and Santa brings them to the children on Christmas Eve. With all the stories, songs, fairy tales, and films about Santa Claus, his annual appearance is almost a religious experience to the infant mind. But when children are around the age of 6, their parents begin to tell the truth about Santa Claus. Many kids react emotionally and in disbelief. A once so much enjoyed illusion is crushed and loses its magical appeal. Hence, it's not uncommon to experience nostalgia for the good old time when we were ignorant of the truth and when a surrogate truth was more appealing. Cypher experiences such nostalgia as well. However, interestingly enough, people can still find joy in what they know is fake. An example of this we see in The Matrix is the behavior of a character named the Oracle. The Oracle appears as an elderly woman, but is a program that initially served as one of the founding forces of the third current version of the Matrix. But when she finished her purpose, she went into exile and started supporting the resistance. Even though, as a computer program, she's very well aware of the world's illusory nature, she seems to enjoy it. She clearly shows delight in the smell of cookies, smokes cigarettes, loves candy, and the sunset. We see the same happening with a Merovingian, a character from the sequel, The Matrix Reloaded, who is passionate about the French language and loves beautiful women and serving them dessert with a happy ending. He also seems to enjoy the taste of olives, like a true Frenchman. Of course, as these characters are both software, these enjoyments could be part of their programming. Nevertheless, they show the human capacity to treat an illusion as if it's real. There's a philosophical term for this phenomenon, namely suspension of disbelief. Suspension of disbelief is the intentional avoidance of skepticism, critical thinking, and logic when facing something unreal, like a work of fiction. For ages, we've eagerly consumed illusions as entertainment, from cinemas and theater performances to the puppet shows of the past. Likewise, Plato's character can still choose to act as if the silhouettes in the cave are real entities, temporarily suspending his disbelief in exchange for enjoyment and having a good time with his old, unenlightened friends. When it comes to the Matrix, the possibilities regarding the enjoyment of fakery are endless. Unlike the illusionists in Plato's cave, the Matrix produces an illusion that we can consider better than reality. We can see this with today's technology as well. How people can immerse themselves in a video game. It's almost like they're living a second life, an existence mostly more pleasant and rewarding.
But if we want to take it a step further, let's look at all the rich people who have no connection to God, who distract themselves with prostitutes, money, drugs, alcohol, cars, luxury, travel, all of these things that distract you for a certain designated amount of time, but it never fulfills you within.
Objects that appear on the screen aren't real, but mere projections. To enjoy them as if they were real, one needs to suspend the truth temporarily.
Yes, exactly. In order for you to live a hedonistic lifestyle, you have to suspend the truth that there is two realities, there's two worlds, and this world that we're living in is temporary. The world that we're going into is eternal. And what we do in this temporary world determines what our eternity looks like. As long as we suspend that truth in our mind and we live life as recklessly and as purposelessly as possible, then we are going to continue to fail as a humankind.
A trinity could delight in the Matrix, perhaps by enjoying a romantic dinner and an evening walk along the River Seine in Paris. Anyhow, humans seem to be able to temporarily accept and appreciate the lie when it suits them. Do we actually want the truth? If asked, most people will probably answer yes to this question. But when exploring Plato's allegory and the Matrix, we discover that the human relationship with truth is not that simple. In some cases, we welcome the truth. In other cases, we hide from it, temporarily suspend it, reject it, and even wish to forget the truth if we had that option. One of the most striking examples is the character Cypher. Both Plato's work and the Matrix show people's disdain for a truth that threatens their reality. We tend to attach to the familiar, the comfortable, the meaningful, and are sometimes willing to defend it with our lives. When it comes to the latter, we just have to look at how people are ready to die for their religions and political ideologies. So again, do we want the truth? The answer seems to be, it depends. We tend to handle the facts selectively, as the truth appears in many different forms, with different magnitudes. Truth can uplift us. It can leave us indifferent, but can also make us depressed and miserable. For example, in Plato's allegory, learning the truth has virtually no downsides. The only downside is the hostility by those in the cave. But aside from that, it's pretty evident that Plato's truth leads to something better and would uplift almost anyone. But in the Matrix, the truth is less enjoyable. However, the effect that truth has on us doesn't necessarily depend on the truth itself. It also depends on the person receiving it. In the case of Neo and Morpheus, the state of the world provided them with meaning and legitimized the battle they were fighting as liberators of humanity, which is quite an incredible goal to have in life. On the other hand, Cypher pokes fun at that goal, which shows his cynicism and the lack of meaning he found in his existence. People tend to adopt surrogate truths to cover up a painful reality. By contrast, others love painful realities, but these are often instrumental to their already dark worldview. People from both camps also tend to ignore facts that oppose how they want to see the world. In many, if not most cases, they share their worldviews with like-minded people. Sharing a certain truth, regardless of whether it's true, has benefits. Again, look at religious groups, political movements, and even the Flat Earth Society. Being part of such groups can provide people with purpose and social connections. In the Matrix, for example, we can see how the belief in the One binds Morpheus and his people together. The downside is that adopting opposing views as a member, even if they were true, could lead to other members ostracizing you. And here's where the dark side of suspension of disbelief comes in. Some, if not many, are willing to turn a blind eye to the truth, not just for innocent enjoyment, but also out of convenience. For example, someone keeps subscribing to a false belief against one's better judgment just to belong or out of fear of being ostracized. All in all, people seem pretty opportunistic when it comes to the truth. We want a truth, not necessarily the truth. We want a reality, not necessarily the reality. But the truth and the lie often have something in common. They both appear as stories. So could it be that we fundamentally don't want the truth, but a story to believe in, identify with, share with others, dwell on, and, perhaps most importantly, to provide us with a sense of meaning and belonging? Thank you for watching.
And that, my friends, is exactly why God created a story for us to believe. It's called the Bible. For you to be able to understand it, you're going to need God to open your eyes to see it. Because for hundreds and thousands of years, people have had the same story and have bastardized and butchered it. So ask God to reveal the truth of his story to you, and he will.